Good evening. This is the Guilford Board of Education. It is Monday, February 3rd. Tonight, we are holding a special Board of Ed meeting with possible action to vote on a budget for the education year 2025-2026 to put forth to the Board of Finance. Just to recap, we did receive the proposed education budget from Dr. Freeman and the administration early in January. Dr. Freeman gave a presentation on that budget, and we had two public forums, last week, Monday and Tuesday, to hear from the public and to hear reactions, comments, requests. On Tuesday evening, January 28th, after the public forum part of the meeting, we did start to deliberate about the budget and talked about a number of items for consideration as we put together a final budget. You may hear about some of those items. We may be bringing up new items as we work really hard to try to put forth a budget that is maintaining the excellence that we are proud to support in Guilford Public Schools and is aware of the taxpayer burden. So an important balance. I will note that the budget that came before the Board of Ed from the administration is in the amount of $75,763,680, representing a 6.53% increase over last year's budget. This increase, we recognize, sounds high. It is in fact being driven by several significant cost drivers. One of them is an increase in the medical benefits that we are expecting of $1.8 million, a really big impact on this budget. Other drivers, the salaries of our faculty and staff. We fully support, for sure, our faculty and staff, but just recognize that that is a cost driver as well. We have been talking both about ways to reduce this budget. If there's anything we need to consider in terms of an addition, that will be addressed as well. So tonight, again, is a chance for the board to continue our deliberations. If we feel that we get to a comfortable spot, we will take a vote tonight and then put forth the budget to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance will hear a formal presentation from us on the budget next Thursday, and then they will start deliberating on both the Board of Education and the town budget as put forth by the Board of Selectmen in the beginning of March. Any other kind of opening comments anyone wants to make sure we say out loud before?
Just, thank you to the community members who came out and
excellent. That's really
forums last Monday and Tuesday, and actually back to October, the date we had. It really helps inform the work we do and the decisions we make and the emails that were received. And I know most likely they've been answered by our chair. So yeah, just that's the most important part, is that we get community input. So.
To that point, Dr. Bellistraci, I think the things that we heard most about through the process, and remembering that we met both with community members and with the leadership team, we heard about an interest, and I think this was the topic that drew the most student comment, but we heard an interest in renovating our weight room, and there is an investment in that area in response to those comments that is carried currently in the bonding proposal that we have. We heard an interest in expanding opportunities for more students to take, or for students to continue to take Italian at the high school. And in our last meeting, we talked about a way that we believe we can make some adjustments with current staffing to be able to provide that opportunity as well. I think that both of those are important ways to respond to the town. and neither one of them has a significant impact on the operational budget that you're looking at here tonight. And then from the leadership team, you heard for years now, you've heard commentary about the need for math interventionists. And so those are built into this budget. We're talking about 2 positions, not 4 positions in this current budget. And they're there with some other offsetting reductions of teaching positions. So again, I do want to note that while this board may spend, or at least I anticipate that this board's going to spend more time tonight talking about ways to reduce this budget, I want to make sure that the community understands that much of what was brought to us and what was advocated for is in this budget and done in a way. And when I began my presentation, I talked about the creativity and the flexibility that we bring to the use of existing resources. And I think the way that we're providing for the weight room, the way that we're providing for Italian instruction, and the way that we're offsetting any impact of math interventionists speaks to that creativity.
Thank you. I think the last thing I want to mention is that like many of you at home, we, the Guilford Public Schools District, are impacted by the increases in costs that you are seeing in your home. Electricity is a driver for us. It's something that we're seeing increasing. That is one example of many. So as we dive into this tonight, we have done a really close look at this budget, but really appreciate that it comes to us from Dr. Freeman and the administration, really carefully crafted. Each of the school principals, as well as other directors across the district, submit a budget that is then thoroughly reviewed internally. You will see in the Guilford Public Schools budget proposal, which is available on our website, that there is a requested and then a revised budget when you look at the summary by location. So I'm just going to note that a significant amount of money has already been cut from initial request before it even came to us. So I think we're going to start talking tonight. I would like to start in one place, which is really a carryover from last week. So last week, last Tuesday at 5:30, there was a meeting here in the Guilford High School Library with the Board of Education, the Board of Finance, and the Board of Selectmen, with our medical benefits consultant. We were all able to be together to hear his presentation of why our medical benefits are going to be appear to be increasing so significantly for the next year. Really great conversation. Great that all 3 boards heard it. This is also impacting the town budget. And as part of our response to this significant increase, the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen are each considering taking some money out of the medical fund balance, which is in fact there for this exact purpose, to help try to alleviate some of the increase in the medical benefits for next year. In order for either board to take that amount out of the medical fund balance, it has to be approved by the Board of Ed, by the Board of Selectmen, and by the Board of Finance. We are going to be considering that tonight. Per our conversation, I expect we'll likely include that, and that will be finally approved as it gets to the Board of Finance. That portion has been discussed as follows: that a total of $750,000 would be taken out of the medical fund balance in total, and that $585,000 would be used to reduce the Board of Ed budget for the 25-26 year. This is aligned with the proportional responsibility based on the number of Board of Ed members on that plan versus the town. So one of the first items of discussion I'm going to suggest is taking that 585,000 out of as a reduction as we consider the budget for next year.
I think that's a good place to start. I do want to clarify too, you know, when you look at the total increase in medical for the Board of Ed, it constitutes 2.5% of our total increase. I think it's important to note that as well as the town is seeing that increase, it's not as simple as just saying your premiums are going up. It's a direct result of the usage of our self-funded plan.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So these are claims that are being brought and paid for by the town for the members that are using the insurance. This is not as simple as
Right. Thank you.
This is not as simple as Anthem coming to us and saying your premiums are increasing because of X, Y, Z. It's because of our actual usage of the plan. And the reason why we have a fund balance is because we've been responsible over the years to build that balance so that when we have a situation that arises such as this, we actually have the fund balance to turn back on. It is literally the rainy day fund for medical. And so as long as we're responsible about it and we're not taking out too much, which we are not doing, I think this is a perfect place for us to start with the 585 reduction.
And Mr. Gilbert, to go even further, when you talk about we've been responsible over the years, to some of the comments that we've heard in some of the public comment, specifically what being responsible with that fund has meant over the last several years is shifting all of our employees into HSAs,
Yep.
High deductible plans, and expecting our employees in every contract negotiation to contribute more to their own insurance. So just to be clear, when some questions came up about our insurance, we have moved to plans that provide the same coverage for our employees, but require more work and require them to pay upfront more than they would in the old plans, which was a benefit for us. And in every contract negotiation, we have expected our employees to pay a greater portion of their own insurance. We have built up that fund intentionally. And it seems that in some of the public comments that nuance was missed. And so I just wanted to go even further to your comment and make it clear that we've been working intentionally and have put those dollars aside because we've been successful over the last decade in changing the way that we insure our employees.
Yeah, and as we've seen in the past, we see these ebbs and flows in claims, right? So, you know, we've seen 2 years of increased claims, and, you know, we only hope that, you know, for the health of our, you know, employees of the whole town, we don't see those claims to continue next year and the year after. So we hope to be in a situation in which next year, you know, we're able to build that fund back up, and we're not looking at a 2.5% increase in healthcare, you know, expenses next year as well. So
I think it would be helpful, maybe Linda has this, it's just, what is the fund balance right now? And what
I have it right here. The fund balance right now is 4.9 million.
Okay, so just to give some context to the community that
Mhm.
taking that.
And then the last thing I'll note is that certainly when we have an increase like this, and we know that it's based on claims, right? And we've gotten a really thorough explanation from our medical consultant. None of that stops us from saying, do we need to do things differently? Do we need to consider, how do we need to consider what we're doing? Are there ways in which we need to think about insurance differently, et cetera? We've done that many times, certainly over my tenure on the board. So please note that certainly we take that very seriously as well. All right. As we have this discussion, I'm going to be noting things that we seem to have general agreement on. The public will no doubt know as we go through these, there may be things that require more discussion. None of these things are in our final budget until we are making a vote. And at that point, we will be identifying each and every item that we are altering in that final vote before we take it. The other thing I just wanted to note that came up, one of the things that came up last week that we talked about, that is another proposal, is to consider taking $40,000 from the pension line. I don't know if we're ready to talk about that, but that was certainly among a list of possible places to reduce that we were considering. As you can imagine, and then I'm going to stop talking and let some of my colleagues talk. As you can imagine, and this is again a comment for our public, we're, as I said, trying to look at this very carefully, and trying, as we make reductions that we feel are important, to try to make the reductions that we think are going to be the least impactful on student learning and students. That is going to be our priority as we go through this.
We're confident with that number. It's been calculated by the actuaries. We feel that we could make that reduction. It is far from the classroom, particularly since it seems that we're not going to be able to discuss the other post-employment benefits tonight until the town agrees on how to move that forward. To us, that seems an easy take, as the medical did. It's an adjustment to a budget number, and we're confident with it.
I'm sorry, is that the one where we're gonna have to put money back in, or was that the OPEB?
No, that's the OPEB. The OPEB will require us to make an adjustment. We're informed by the town what our contribution will need to be to pension. Like everything else, we start so early that Linda was able to check in on that number, and it moved in the right direction. We're confident that we can take a $40,000 reduction, and there's no exposure on our part there.
Okay. Any concerns about that?
No, I'd like to see $40,000 added to this.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. I will just make a brief mention because it's been noted tonight, and it was a discussion for our folks who are following our discussions. We did talk a little bit about the possibility of also taking an adjustment on this OPEB line, which is the retirement benefit account. Would we either pay only partially into that fund this year? However, again, that is a joint commitment between the town and the Board of Ed, and our business managers are looking carefully at that and working with the folks that do those, the actuaries, to make sure that that could be considered an appropriate decision. So we are not going to do that until we have really solid information from the folks we work with.
And we don't feel in a rush I mean, we'll still have a full opportunity to
Absolutely.
discuss that with the Board of Finance and make a collaborative decision with them about that adjustment at a later time.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
I just wanted to explain, right, for those who are listening and following along. All right.
I do want to say, as we're tracking this, right?
Yes.
So we could all kind of be on the same page. That's a total of $625,000. Our increase is now at 5.65%.
That's right.
By my
Yep.
numbers.
I'm tracking as well. Thank
Okay.
you. So that's great.
Do we want to just discuss as a group if everyone's comfortable with the medical reserve so we can officially count that 585?
I think we could, I did get the sense, I'm happy to revisit it. We're not going to include anything definitely until we vote on it all together.
Okay.
But
to that point, we heard Joe Spurgeon tell us that he is comfortable with that withdrawal, right? That would still leave us at 4.25 of a medical reserve. He feels that that is sufficient and responsible and a good number for us to begin next school year. So again, we would say, the administration, that we think that's a good cut to make. We've invested those dollars over 10 years or more. That it's raining. Now's the time to pull from there.
Oh, I think that we've definitely done our due diligence. It sounded like that meeting was really helpful last
Yes.
week in understanding that we have in fact, just recently gone out to bid as soon as last year to try to see if there were better plans, and there were not. And I think he certainly helped me understand that, next year, if we have less sick people, then we will wind up kind of not in the same position again. And this is really a direct result of, as John was saying, of people using the highest end of our medical benefits.
Yep.
So hopefully next year we just don't have as many super sick people. We have regular numbers of sick people. It was like 25% higher this year,
yeah.
A lot of
right?
usage.
Like
Yeah.
30 people.
Yeah,
to 40
it was-
people.
Well, we need context on that. Many of our employees are getting giving us claims up to and above $150,000. So that's one. which is a lot of money. So one or two people doing that, it's a lot of money.
Right.
Secondly, some people go up to $1 million, although we don't pay all that. But more people are making claims than last year. That's the experience we've had. And we don't know if that's an anomaly or whether that's the new normal. But that's all of a sudden when we have that big bump.
It was a really helpful meeting, I agree.
Yeah, and
It
it was
was.
helpful to see that sum total over how many years was that? About 10 years?
Yeah.
Where it wound up being we were at a 1% plus or minus kind of difference as the,
Relatively flat over 10
yeah,
years.
so over 10 years, our average was only 1%
Yeah.
differential. So as this year is high and 2 years ago was really high, in general, we've only been at about a 1% change.
Sure.
Thank you, Betsy. Helpful information. Okay, that really then takes us into, looking at some other areas, for potential discussion, capital supplies, purchase services, and either positions, new positions or existing positions in the budget. I think we talked about a couple last week. I know I asked about the Guilford Transition Academy increase in rent. It's in the budget right now, in the proposed budget at 75. It is currently at 40. I think what we discussed, and I'm looking at Mrs. Trudeau, is that were we to take a cut, it would be best to take a cut, not of the 35, but of 30, in case there is and expecting there might be an increase, right, in yearly rent. So that is a possible area for discussion.
I guess, could I just clarify? Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and clarify?
To clarify the community, for the community, that would allow us to continue to offer services at the level that we are currently servicing. It is no reduction in
Yes,
service.
important.
It will again kick down the road for another year any opportunity we have to move into a larger location to expand the opportunity that we offer, which might allow us to support a slightly larger number, which actually could allow us to take in some tuition students from other towns. But we could take it as a reduction this year. We've been having difficulty locating properties that seem to fit the need, but it will not in any way reduce the services that we're currently offering to the students enrolled or any other student in Guilford who I identified as appropriately being placed in that setting.
Right.
And we could still continue to identify potential locations.
Right.
Yep.
Just
For the following year.
Yes,
for the
we can
following
keep
year.
searching.
Right.
We would
That's
ask for the money again this time next year. Correct.
So that's a possible area. I'm going to name a couple others and then turn it over to colleagues, and then we can dive into any of them. Homebound tutors is another place we might be able to see some savings. Over the last 2 complete budget years, that line has been kind of actualized at about 80% of the budgeted amount. So a suggestion that we could potentially take 20,000 out of that line. Obviously that history doesn't guarantee what this year will look like, but that seems a less risky place to take a little money and see some savings.
And any student who required those services would receive them, but
That's
based on
important.
past
That's exactly
experience,
right.
we believe that we could make that reduction as we haven't expended the full number in at least the last 2 years.
So I don't know if anyone wants to talk about those 2 items or bring up some other items for discussion and we talk about them in more specificity.
I support using both of those as cuts.
I think, we'd love to grow the Transition Academy program, sure. But I think in time, we may see some other grant opportunities around special education. So I think it's wise to keep it strong and build it, but within the confines of the physical space. But to your point, it's been hard to identify a location. So I feel comfortable with that. And I think it's a safe bet that we can.
Other thoughts on one or the other of those suggestions?
I think both are good to consider.
Okay. Other thoughts as we consider possible ways to reduce the budget?
I have one. I'll be the unpopular person once again. I think I am every year. The summer pathways program. You know, I know it was up for discussion last year. I know we've talked about maybe charging people. For 100, it's less than 100 children, I think, at this point, right? I understand.
But maybe 100 to 150 on a good guess.
I get it, right? I totally understand the need, you know, for continued education during the summer. If we're gonna keep it, I really think we have to charge parents for it at this point. We're in those times where we need to, if we're gonna keep a program that people really love, then we need to have people pay for it. I don't know how much, but I definitely think that needs to be a consideration.
I'll reiterate, I've brought this up 2 years now, and it breaks my heart a little bit, but it is not a mandated program. It was paid for to get us over the pandemic bump with pandemic dollars, and those dollars have sunsetted. And we do have concerns about picking up that workload in the summer with a skeleton crew. And so it services a relatively small number of students in an unmandated program. And so again, I think in difficult years like this, we have to take a difficult look at something that is by definition now, after we've come through the pandemic, a nice thing to offer without being something that we have to offer or that we were offering to help us get us through the pandemic impact, the early impact of the pandemic.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think, you know, one of the things that I look forward to most is the September meeting when we hear all about the success of this program. You know, if we had to make an A list and a B list, that would be on my B list of cuts, but I hear what you're saying.
It's definitely on my A list, just to.
I get it. I get it. We have to disagree sometimes.
Yes, we do, John. Every year.
But no, we see the success of the program,
Yes,
right? And I agree with you. If there was a way to subsidize it, that would be a way to, you know, let it to continue. But, you know, to Dr. Freeman's point, if it's just going to become increasingly difficult to staff and support financially, it needs to be considered.
I'll lean with you, and this might be calm for now.
Okay.
Just because it touches our students, and I totally hear Jen's point of view, and yes, it was something we created out of ARPA money, and I don't think we thought it would be so successful and so in demand, and I suspect if we kept it going, it would probably grow more, but maybe there is a path to supplementing it with a tuition, but for now, I guess I put it on my B list.
I would even go a step further, and that maybe, you know, maybe we could be a little creative with it. Maybe if there's a way to work it in with ESY. I don't know if that's possible with FERPA and everything else, but that might be an interesting way, because I think it coincides with the same time frame. And how great would it be for the summer, instead of having students separated by special needs and what we call typical peers, kind of merge those again. Might not be maybe that's a way that we can also work on doing it. Right.
It's an interesting idea. I mean, they're part of that same presentation that you referenced every September. ESY is built around individual students' IEPs and the goals that they work on during the school year, and continuing work on those goals and not losing ground. So it's very individualized. The pathways is by design broad and standards based and grade level associated. So it would involve, we'd have to really think carefully about how to put the two together.
But I also know a lot of those summer programs, the kids are working on their social emotional
Yes.
and how to work with other typical peers. So yeah, just something that comes to my mind.
It's an interesting idea.
This is probably a smaller one, but are there any like supply, like we talked about some supply lines, they're not big numbers, but and I hate when we ask this, you know, every administrator in each building every year gives their budget to Dr. Freeman, and in there has different supplies and line items, and you had given us some smaller suggestions around some supplies totaling maybe for like a little over $6,000. I know it's small, but do you feel that that's still going to leave those administrators comfortable with what they need in their buildings?
Yes, not
Yeah.
thrilled but comfortable. The drama class supplies, if the drama teacher is not going to be included, that one becomes a bit of a no-brainer, although it's a small number. It doesn't seem like we're going to be discussing adding back in a drama teacher this year, so that one is a no-brainer and something we should take. The other two in that area, there were areas where we were trying to build up a little bit. In one place, there was a principal who made a little bit of a special appeal, and in the other, we're looking at expanding the pre-K, but in both cases, those reductions could be absorbed. So yes, we could cluster that number together to 6,360 and take those three.
So that is Lake's pre-K supplies, Lake's building administrative supplies, and Adams drama class supplies.
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe they total the 6,360.
Yes.
Now our math gets harder.
Further comments about those? There will of course be ample opportunity to go back to comments as well
Yeah.
when we're making a final list. But anyone have thoughts on those? As Dr. Freeman noted, the total for those three would be $6,360.
So are we at a total cut at this moment of, we're considering a total cut of $681,360?
For 5.57.
I was just gonna ask if you're running a cell with that. I'm sorry, 5.
B list? No, that's, I think.
No,
that's
no,
not
no,
B list.
I did not include the B list into that. I just included the
So right now that's 585 for medical, 40 for pension, 30 for GTA, and the 6360.
20 for homebound.
For homebound tutors.
5.57, is that what?
Yes.
5.57.
Need to make sure that all of these spreadsheets are the same.
Yeah.
And what was the budget that was proposed?
6.5% increase.
0.53.
6.53.
You've almost dropped a whole.
You're very close to having dropped a full percentage.
So if we talk about paras next,
Yes.
in the budget, it calls for 5 additional paras. We've talked about potentially, making some cuts to that. I would propose we start with 2. Am I to assume that if we have a line item for $121,825, each para is equivalent to $24,365?
Correct.
Okay. So I would propose 2 cuts to that para line.
Dr. Freeman, could you again explain what the call was for the 5 additional, just so?
Yes, so again, as we've mentioned with a number of items, we project the number of paraprofessionals that will be required for any school year. We can see what we're currently using this year. We can project which students are going to be moving up a grade. We carry that number forward, but paraprofessionals, many of the paraprofessionals that work are directly related to individual or small numbers of students who require additional adult support. So that number, those 5, is built into our projected need for next year. We believe that we could make some small reductions and still meet all of the students' needs. As with a couple of the other lines, it's important to note, should students require that additional adult support, we will provide for them. If this line ends up being under budgeted next year, we will still provide the adult support. We will budget and fill that position, and we will move monies from other lines if necessary to make sure that those students have their needs met. So this one does have a little bit of a liability, but we have that every year. Even if we kept all 5 of those positions and needs grew significantly and we needed 6 or 7 additional paras, we go out and hire those additional 1 or 2 also. So it's not an unusual situation to be in. It's a little bit of an anticipated risk, but we are confident that we'll be able to cover it moving forward.
And Dr. Freeman, that's taking into consideration the projected enrollment increase next year of just 100 students.
Yes.
How likely are we to fill 5 para? Is a para job fairly easy to fill, or are we struggling as we are with substitutes?
We're struggling both to fill and then hold. So 2 things are happening. It's harder for us to find paras to fill those positions. And the parents that do fill those positions have been more transient in our experience than they have been before. So we see more turnover and continued turnover through the year than we had been seeing previously. I don't believe that today I can sit here and say that we have all of our para vacancies filled. We're working today to hire and fill for a small number of vacancies. And I believe that is the new normal, at least in the short term. We'll be constantly hiring and filling para positions like that. We pull some of those out of our sub ranks and then we're shorter subs. And so we'll keep working on that.
That's at 5.5.
I'm sorry, what number did we record for 2 paraprofessionals?
48730 for a total reduction of 5.5 for a total increase of 5.5%. The total decrease that we've discussed is $730,090.
So that's going to represent almost exactly 1%.
Over 1%.
Thank you.
So we have other things we looked at, but but they start talking about teachers,
Exactly.
elementary
Yeah.
teacher, high school halftime teacher, a music teacher,
Math interventions.
math intervention. So all of a sudden, we've reached the point where we're talking about personnel. And I'm reluctant to do that.
Likewise.
Well, to go to your A and B list analogy, right? This is not to suggest that we won't have those conversations when we get to the next level and we begin collaborating with the Board of Finance on what is going to be. Now, the Board of Finance only looks at bottom line. They cannot make specific suggestions to this board. But should the Board of Finance feel that this budget needs to be lower, then these items will need to be discussed at another round of budget reductions. And I know that we'll want to start by talking about other post-employment benefits, but we may need to be able to talk about these items at a later date.
Yeah, I'm looking here. I'd love to get it down a little more, but I'm seeing what my colleagues are saying here, that we're now in people, and in people that were in the budget because the administration thinks they need these people.
I could make one possible suggestion, and
Yeah.
it might be the 0.4 ELA position at the high school that is currently an unfilled position. Now,
Okay.
unfilled positions get used. That 0.4 might become essential to helping us solve the Italian issue, but right now that 0.4 position is unfilled. It could be cut, and again, it will not impact class sizes or offerings in the English department.
To the point that we've heard from many people about Italian, will it have an impact
That's
on
my
us
question.
being able to have Italian 3 or 4?
Yeah.
Keeping it provides us greater flexibility. I mentioned last time we met two teachers in other languages that are teaching above their contract and being compensated for that. But those dollars are available. Those dollars, and having this flexibility would give us I think we'd be more confident to be able to fill that part.
I think it would be irresponsible for us to get rid of that.
Understood.
I agree.
And I think a full percentage, like a full,
We've done a lot of work
We-
here. Yeah.
cut it down
And
to
this-
5.5. I
just-
think that's a good start.
And we haven't really, we're not touching the medical OPEB. No, we are, I'm sorry. No,
We haven't touched the
We
open
haven't
Sorry.
touched OPEB. That could be another significant
Right.
reduction if the 3 boards agree.
if we agree with the town. Yeah.
right, so I think. Yeah, with that in mind, to your point, a lot of my colleagues have said, I don't want to touch staffing or things that directly touch our students on a daily basis. Short of a few, like even professional development, it's a small number, but that's really important for our teachers. So,
Very much so.
yeah, I don't want to really, right now, don't feel comfortable touching that.
We're a learning organization.
The other place that we have touched a number of times, wrong word, another place we have taken reduction, and it's actually a common place for us to take a reduction when we're faced with having to take reductions, and we've been presented with a carefully thought out budget, is the site improvement line. I am certainly much more nervous about taking anything that is removing a teacher from our school or district. That site improvement line has been over budget for a number of years in a row. We've had conversations with the Board of Finance who have noted it as we sat in Board of Finance meetings. And it's a really important line because it's where we keep our buildings and address,
Right.
keep our buildings.
The name is a little misleading because
Right.
it's really a lot of our service contracts, from our electrical systems, our heating systems,
Right.
all of it. It's like the
Right.
guts of our
And I'm
buildings.
just a
Yeah.
little
Site
concerned
maintenance.
about always going to that,
Yeah.
when in fact, we have had, to deal with the fact that it's been over budget for a number of years in a
Well,
row.
it's actually more than that because the superintendent has said to us, if we need to spend money because of student needs and it's beyond what we budgeted, they'll figure out where to transfer it from. If there are no lines left in our budget because we cut them to transfer money from, then we really put ourselves in a bind. So it's better to keep, we already know that site improvement has gone over for the last 5 years. Taking $60,000 now is a guarantee that we're gonna have to transfer money in to cover costs. So unless we have to do it now, I would say we should wait.
I agree.
Other thoughts? As we, again, look at,
I'm comfortable with what we've discussed so far and not really comfortable with anything else. I feel like this year's budget was really lean, as much as it's a substantial overall increase. There's nothing exciting. We don't have maker spaces. We don't have the drama teacher. Like, we don't have cool stuff in this budget. It's kind of sad. Like, it's kind of a bummer of a
Bare
budget.
bones.
Well, I
Um,
think it's important to know, this is a 1% increase at this point.
Right,
Yes.
right.
When you take into account medical at 2.5, and you take into contractual salaries at 1.5%. That's a 4.5, we were at 4.5 when you combine medical increases and salaries.
There's 1% over
And we're
that.
1% over that.
Right. I think
And
the
given the
total
cost of
cost
inflation and
out of our
electricity and all the
control
other
is
things, that's
4.5
remarkable
million.
to be at 1%.
Agreed.
Considering that.
Yeah, I mean, they're seeing districts across the state coming in at 12, 13, 15% in their initial work,
Well,
so.
We're in an interesting bind. Our job as a board of education is to try to come up with budgets that optimize education for the kids in the town. And the larger community is equally concerned, rightfully, with the finance side. And but our job is to advocate for the best possible budget in support of learning. And we can't arbitrarily say, let's just get down another 2 or 3%, because we know what the impact will be. So I'm a little concerned that this year has got a higher percentage than past years, so that the headline is it's going up. But the other headline should be that almost all of that is forced on us externally. And if we start cutting beyond where we are now, we know, and we need to explain to the public, it really starts to impact what's going on in the schools. And that's going to be an issue for us to look forward to in the next 4 or 5 weeks in terms of explaining it publicly.
We have in the past carried a figure for retirement savings. We have not built anything into this budget for retirement savings. Last year, while we did not build a figure in, we did recognize a small retirement savings even after the hiring last year. Again, like a number of other items, it would be sort of a liability, but we could pick a budget number. We could say that we were comfortable with 10,000, 20,000, which is lower than we've done in past years. It would bring us below the 5.5. It would get us over a full, substantially over a full percent. And I think bring us below the 5.5 if we wanted to carry a salary number there.
thoughts on a retirement savings?
It's one of our largest lines. You bring it down by 10 or 20,000 and
Right.
you work within
Yeah.
that line. And we charge it to retirement savings.
Thoughts?
I don't know, I feel like we're at a point here where, we're really gonna start picking things apart, not that we shouldn't be, but, you know, we have a responsibility to put forth a responsible budget, and I think we've gotten there. I'd be in favor of stopping where we are.
I would agree with that.
Agreed.
For sure.
There's still a lot of other weighing in that will happen with Board of Finance in the town, but I, you know, we've reduced it by over 1 percentage point. As
And we're
to
not
Amy's
fairly
point,
done. We know that we
right.
still need to pass the Board of Finance, we need to pass the town meeting, and we ultimately need to pass a referendum.
Okay, so here's what I've heard so far. Reduction from the medical fund balance of $585,000. This would be part of a joint action with the Board of Selectmen, who would be taking out an amount from the town side. I'm seeing a reduction of $40,000 for pension. A reduction of 20,000 from the homebound tutor line. A reduction in $30,000 from the Guilford Transition Academy line. This would mean that we maintain our Guilford Transition Academy space and the current services. It simply means that it would delay looking into a larger space. Reduction of that's 30,000. Reduction in drama class supplies at Adams of 2,000. Is that the right amount? Yes. Reduction of pre-K supplies at Lakes of 3,360. A reduction in building administration supplies at Lakes of $1,000. And the removal of 2 paras from the paraprofessional line in the amount of $48,730. This is a total of $730,090, which would represent an increase over this current budget of 5.5, and would represent a decrease from the budget that was brought to us by 1.03%. So that's where we are. I heard summer pathways suggested. I heard some support for removing that now. I heard some concern about removing that now. Is there a final discussion on that topic?
We also did hear from a few constituents who were advocating that we keep it, so I'd encourage us to consider keeping it for now and remain on option B line.
Okay.
Further.
Anything else? All right.
I'd like to make a motion. Are we ready?
Yes, I mean,
Do we want further
I'm
discussion?
sitting here. No, you know what? I would love to get this down a little further. I'm concerned about the amount, but I'm hearing what everyone's saying, that the next place to go is physicians and people. And that there's hesitation to do that.
And we're waiting to work with the town on looking at
The OPEB.
the OPEB, which
Yep.
could be a significant
Yep.
reduction for us and help that percentage decrease. So
All right.
How did we end up at taking 2 paras instead of 3 paras? How did we decide like 2 versus 3?
Arbitrary.
I mean, that would, one more para would be another $25,000.
Correct.
it's definitely something we come back to, right? If we have to make actions, it's a good idea. Yeah.
The problem we've got is that, well, the past 2 years, we haven't used all the paras that we budgeted. That's almost a guarantee that we're gonna need more paras. I mean, it just happens. And so how do we keep a little bit of margin for ourselves? As long as because they deal directly with kids. So I think it's a legitimate suggestion. I mean, one could argue get rid of all the paras, all 5 of them. So it is arbitrary. So the question is, what's the safest thing to do, given what we don't know? And whether it's another $20,000 or $30,000 in the budget is not going to determine whether the budget goes up or down. We're not talking about big numbers now. So I'd feel safer if we kept as many personnel in as possible.
Correct.
Any other suggestions, other things we want to consider? That OPEB option really is a considerable option if we if we're able to take advantage of it. And we'll want to give that significant thought if we can, because that could also really help reduce this budget.
And I think what I'm hearing is that the administration and the Board of Ed are both going to continue to encourage the other 2 town boards to take that reduction before we go to positions that are currently in this budget.
Right.
Yes.
I don't know that will be significant enough. I think somebody said the Board of Finance is concerned about the bottom line and what they think is reasonable and acceptable for the town. So hopefully it's 330,000. If it's more, then we will be coming back to these conversations, whether they're classroom positions or more para positions or the summer pathways program. It's likely we will be revisiting these conversations.
All right. Yeah. Any other discussion?
Before we ask for a motion, could we ask Linda for what the new budget total will be if there is a reduction of $730,090?
75,033,590.
That would be the new
Concur.
budget
Yeah,
total.
I have the same, I have the same number. 3 of us have the same number.
That you would be moving on to the Board of Finance for their approval, well, for their consideration and hopefully approval.
All right. Don, did you want to?
Yeah, I motion to approve the amended budget at $75,033,590.
Second.
And I am, for the record, going to again be clear about what that is. From the medical benefits line, a reduction of $585,000. From the pension line, a reduction of $40,000. From the homebound tutors line, $20,000. From the Guilford Transition Academy rent, a reduction of $30,000. Drama class supplies at Adams, a reduction of $2,000. Pre-K supplies at Lakes, a reduction of $3,360. Building administration supplies at Lakes, a reduction of $1,000. And a reduction of 2 paraprofessionals from that line in the amount of $48,730. So there is a motion and a second to approve Board of Ed budget to put forward to the Board of Finance in the amount of $75,033,590. I've again heard a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? All right. So that is the final vote for tonight. This budget will be submitted to the Board of Finance. Again, the administration and the Board of Ed will be presenting this budget to the Board of Finance next Thursday. That on that same night, the Board of Selectmen will also be proposing their budget. The Board of Finance will then, as I noted in a number of meetings, I believe at the beginning of March, be deliberating. There will be public comment at least one of those evenings. And then the Board of Finance will make a decision about these budgets. If the Board of Finance reduces the Board of Education budget and they can reduce by an amount. They can't tell the Board of Education what to reduce, but they can certainly reduce it by an amount. That will come back to us, and then we will determine how to meet that further reduction by taking additional cuts from the budget. I want to echo Moira's comment at the beginning of the meeting. Thank you to all of the public who reached out to us, who came to public forums, who emailed us and shared their comments. Again, this process is not over, so there are additional opportunities to do that next to the Board of Finance. Given that, Dr. Freeman, do you have any final comment before we go?
Just in addition to appreciating the public, appreciating this board and the way that you approach difficult decisions like this. Again, thank you.
All right, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. Have a good evening.